now that we are all here together. This first question is for Mr. Iannucci on the big screen. With your history of sitcoms set in chaotic war environments, was inevitable that you will end up doing one set on the behind the scenes or of a blockbuster movie?
Was it inevitable? I don't know. I mean, it was. It arose out of a conversation I had with Sam Mendes and his experience of doing two Bond movies back to back, and what it felt like being a highly regarded theatre and independent film director, and suddenly part of a big machine. And I just thought it's just a funny idea of someone who finds out that not everything is that you're not totally in control. And I think, and John, I'm sure will say something about this. What we discovered about these enormous movies, where you feel that they're all structured and planned and set out in their 5-year phases and so on, and then you find out that a lot of them are just kind of made up at the last minute, and the ending is cut and is rewritten and reshot, and new directors are brought in and new writers are brought in, and all sorts. So it's that kind of chaos behind the kind of surface sheen that is always appealing to see, I think.
Have you anything to say about that? Well, what the research process? Did you talk to some professionals? Did you draw up on your own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mixture of both, right? We all of us knew this world. It was fun for me. I came from writing Succession, which involved a lot of research about something I didn't really know a lot about, American news media, American politics. So it was kind of like learning a second language. Whereas making this, felt very comfortable because we've spent a lot of time, all of us, behind the scenes making things. And when you know a world like that and it's sort of in your bones, there's just a confidence, I think, that the research, you can wear it very lightly, instead of sometimes you do a bit of research and you're so proud of it, and so you put all of it on screens, show people that you know what you're talking about. But when it's really sort of embedded, you can kind of let it go, right? And you can wear it quite lightly. But yeah, we spoke to a lot of people, a lot of producers. People were very, very open. Everyone wanted to talk to us. I think it was a sort of form of therapy for a lot of people that have worked on these movies, because they are really, really demanding, and they eat up your social life, your personal life, and they don't often love you back. So it's a tough industry, and I think people were more than happy to talk.
And I think also, each one of us in our different roles have at some point while making something just stood back kind of emotionally and mentally from it and just thought, what are we doing? We're all talented, kind of intelligent adults, and yet we're putting costumes on and we're running around and we're having fights and we're saying funny lines if we're doing but there's just part of you going, I mean, other people are doctors and, build houses and fly things, and we're doing this thing, and some of us have been doing it for decades. Why? So there's that, or is it just me?
There's also so much money at the stake with these productions, but there's also the sense that if something goes wrong, then all the house of cards could fall apart at any minute, at any moment. How would you deal with that kind of pressure?
Yeah, it is an enormous pressure, right? And that's something we wanted to show, that everyone at every level, it might seem like there's good and bad, but I was really keen to show that everyone's got a boss. That's possibly where these movies are going wrong, is because companies get bought. When Marvel, to give an example, but when it was self-owned and it could do as it pleased, it was able to take a big risk, right? It had a pot of money, and instead of making 2 movies, they made Iron Man, and they hired a risky Robert Downey Jr. and people didn't really know his profile at that point was, it's somewhat tarnished. And so they struck out, right? Because they didn't have to answer to shareholders. They didn't have quarterly earnings calls. the problem now, I guess, is that for everyone at every level, when you get brought up and you become part of a big conglomeration, that everyone is on dancing. There's a line about scrotum resting on a razor's edge, right? Everyone's scrotum is on a razor's edge at all times. And so the guy, Pat, that we see has a boss, and he has a boss, and that boss has shareholders. So there's no one in it that is, there's no one that gets a free ride in this environment. Everybody is walking a tightrope every day.
Yeah, in that sense, the franchise is like a workplace sitcom, but like a workplace sitcom on steroids inside the craziest possible situation. But the dynamics are very much the same.
Yeah, and that was really important to for the show to be more than just one thing, more than just a satire of this type of movie making. To make it more than that, it felt important, and I guess that's where we got to with centering it on Himesh's character and Lolly, that making it about these people that Daniel's character Eric is their boss effectively, and like most bosses, he has his ego and his whims, and they're dealing with that. And I guess that's hopefully pretty relatable. Hopefully it's very specific in the world that it's about, but it's also somewhat relatable in that anyone in any job has these pressures.
Mm-hmm. How was working in a set inside of a set? Was it like that a bizarre game of mirrors? Did you tend to lose perspective on what's behind and what's in front of the camera?
Well, I did, because I was, being the exec producer, I wasn't there every day because I jokingly said at the start, an executive producer only turns up on set if something's gone wrong. And then actually I did turn up on set because I just saw the rushes and it was so funny. I thought, I just want to come and watch. But the first time I did that, some people just thought, what's gone wrong? But I sat down sat down in front of some monitors, and then someone came up to me and said, sorry, you're in shot. And I thought, well, why have you put the monitors in shot? And then I realized it was Tecto's monitors, and franchise's monitors were over there. So I just spent most of the shoot looking like a confused old man, really.
And for you as actors, was it difficult? Was it strange?
Yeah, there was one point where I stood outside one of the studios dressed as Daniel with all the, walkie-talkies and the lanyard and stuff, and someone drove past on a buggy, part of another production entirely at Leavesden, and they were like, mate, do you know where XYZ is? And I was like, I have no idea, I'm an actor. And obviously they were like, why are you dressed as an AD then? Because they didn't know what we were making.
I haven't asked this, but what happened when you, as in character, have to shout cut? How do people set no?
Probably work quite a few occasions,
we would just keep going because we thought that it was Daniel saying cut, and so we would just keep talking, and then eventually someone would scream cut, and we'd be like, oh, okay.
Oh, right.
So that was the difference. It needed to be a scream. So
and that bit that you probably just saw in episode 2 where Billy's on the wires, like he's asking to be let down because he can't feel his legs. His balls, right? Yeah. And I walked on to set to do my sort of bit of that scene, and he was like, "Guys, I can't feel my balls. Can you let me down?" And no one did anything because they were like, "He's improvising, guys." Yeah. And he was like, "No, this is me, Billy. I can't feel my balls. Let me down."
Everyone has to have a safe word, I think.
And in the show, there's monitors everywhere, and there's the sense that everybody's watching over everybody. Is that modern filmmaking in a way? You are all the time sensing that someone is watching over you.
It was very funny for me because I got Sam's personal monitor. It felt like knighthood. It was the monitor I think he used also for the Bond films. Yeah. And he said, well, now you're playing me, or not me, but a director. So, he was giving me his monitor. So I was always watching what we were shooting. And then playing the filmmaker, I did not understand why Sam Mendes wanted to shoot always 42 takes. Because for me, after the third take, I thought, this is fine. Lunch. And Sam Mendes would always go, again.
Yeah. And that thing of being watched, I remember doing when I directed my first film. And then when I just going to the bathroom, going 10-1, as they say, going to the bathroom, you just hear a whole set of people on monitors go, yeah, he's just going for 10-1. Yeah, no, he's just left the stage now. No, he's got into the bathroom. He's at the jet. He's in cubicle 4. Yeah. Yeah, he's done. He's coming out now. And it's just like this whole. there's no escape really.
What's amazing is the show does not try to tear down the superhero movies. Quite the contrary, it shows how hard it is to make them, and the people that made them work very hard. They are hard-working people.
Yeah, that's what's great about making a show like this and spotlighting them, because anything that we've made, anything that you've ever watched has had a crew, has had a first AD, has had a third AD, has had a producer, has had runners, and they don't really ever get to do this sort of thing, so it was great to finally, especially as an actor, to kind of inhabit that role and really appreciate how hard it is.
Were you afraid that the show would be perceived as some comedy for industry insiders and not for the general public, that the general public will not care about how the sausage gets made?
I mean, it's yeah, I guess probably, but you also just have to follow the idea and follow what you think, where the show will sort of lead you. It takes its own life, right? And you can't sort of try and construct it in that way. It's not like you can't be too kind of specific about it, but. I guess in the sense that it is essentially a workplace comedy, I do feel that even if you don't recognize this exact experience, that there'll be parts of it that you should recognize, right? Like putting everything into your workplace. What we wanted to show was talented people stuck in a very dysfunctional environment that is not getting the best out of them, and that the thing they're ultimately doing is not probably going to be very good, right? It might be, but let's face it, probably it won't be. And I guess most people in most jobs can recognize the feeling of thinking that they know better, feeling like, are we marching towards the gunfire? I turn up every day and I do my best, but my boss is a dick and he doesn't know what he's doing. On that level, I think and hope that it expands beyond this specific world. But at a certain point, you just have to follow the idea, I think.
And I think people are interested in knowing what goes on behind highly visible, iconic aspects of our culture. It's not like you had to be a member of a rich media family to get Succession or understand Washington politics to get Veep. And if anything, this world that we're showing has an even greater mass reach. It's all pervasive. Everywhere you look, it's another superhero movie. So I think there will be a genuine appetite to see, get a sense of what really goes on in the making of those movies.
Yeah. And how can you tell when you are in the middle of a shooting like this? How can you tell if what you're making is going to be good, it's going to be a Dark Knight, or it's going to be not so good? How can you tell? How can you distantiate yourself from it?
We all had a great time making the show. So, whether that's a marker of anything, I don't know. But I'm proud of what I've seen so far, and we had a great time. As actors, we became a sort of a family, the ensemble, and that's something actors often say when they're selling their show. But it was really true. Like, we genuinely all got on really well, and I think that came through in the performances. But
I mean, everybody thinks that my point of reference was my experience with Marvel, but I always say that it wasn't really the case. I did another film which was a total shit show. Not only one, but that was a disaster from day one, and it became worse and worse. There was no turning back. But at Marvel, my very first scene with them was when my character Zemo wanted to kill himself. It was actually my final scene. It was supposed to be somewhere in Russia, Siberia, minus 40 degrees, but we shot it in Atlanta, plus 40 degrees. So I was wearing a Canada Goose jacket and a gun, and I was sweating like a pig. Then I thought of this accent that I had, thought of, Sokovian, so Eastern European kind of, So I was talking to myself like that, being very dramatic. And then Chadwick, God bless him, such a brilliant, phenomenal actor, had a very thick African accent and was approaching me and stopping me from killing myself. And of course, I had to laugh in one thing, and I, immediately regretted it. But I thought, like, I was looking at myself from the outside, and I said, how is that gonna work? Green screens, we're in Russia, okay, we're all sweating, we speak in very funny accents. And then you see the final result, and it's actually a good scene. So I think so. Well, I don't know if everybody agrees, but so that with I really cannot complain. It was a very well-oiled machine. I never had this feeling of utter chaos because Kevin Feige is surveilling the whole thing in a very professional manner. But again, there have been one or two other flicks that I've done that, Jesus Christ, every single night I was looking at my grey face in the mirror, and I thought, how am I going to survive that?
That's right. There's something. There's a kind of magic that you can't tell. There are. When I did The Death of Stalin, there was one scene in it that has become a kind of standout scene at the committee meeting. But it was like the worst day. We were all tired. It was very hot. They were all in a room with no air conditioning, and it was just a bad day. And I was just keen to just finish it and get home and have a wash. And I then blanked it from my memory. And then suddenly in the edit, it kind of becomes one of the central key scenes. And you just can't tell on a shoot, really. You really can't, because until you see the cut and the assembly and where it sits with everything else, that's part of the kind of the magic, the fact that in the end, it has to assert itself, whatever you're making. You can't really control it. Mm-hmm. Sounds very profound, doesn't it? Yeah, it sounds. It has to assert itself. The art has to assert itself. We are the asserted too. Yeah.
That's amazing. Speaking about art, Daniel's character, he's embodying the artistic side versus the commercial, the industrial side. Do you think both extremes can have a dialogue? There's some middle ground between art and industry, especially in superheroes, in big tentpole movies?
Yeah, I guess there's. You say that, yeah, Eric. I guess his character is. He's pretty serious. He's been kind of lured in to make this movie. He's had a couple of kind of big-ish indie films, and now he finds himself at the helm of this giant kind of tanker that he's out of control. And yeah, I guess if it works, you can get that synthesis of, you can steer it through a middle ground. But I think you have to be very careful. I think if you're a young filmmaker, that you get lured in by the feeling of, I think I can handle the machine. And something we heard from research was that producers, two things. One thing that they told us was, for directors, the best advice for a director of a franchise movie is let your body go limp and let the franchise carry you downstream. So basically it's like, don't resist the machine. Don't try to be a director, because it will kill you, right? You're better. There's too much movie for any one person to direct, so you're better to just let your body go limp and just float downstream. The other thing we heard was the joke on franchise movies. We tried to use this in the show, but was that they refer to the director as the intern, because the whole machinery of making the movie stays the same, and then the one thing that changes from installment to installment is the director. So they're like, yeah, let's bring the intern in because we're ready to shoot, and they go and get the director. We wanted to do something on the show where we had an episode where there was an actual intern, and then the director joked that they call him the intern, and they're like, let's get the intern in, and then they turn up, and then the actual intern is directing the movie, and they're like, no, he can't. Anyway, I think I do think it's a tough, and looking through the lens of Eric, and it's a big arc that he goes on across the series. he does get very much chewed up by this machine. And I think you can hold on to a creative ideal for so long, but the franchise is bigger than any one individual, and the position of the director is really at the hard edge of that, and you very quickly get chewed up if you're not careful.
Well, Mr. Iannucci, I think it's time for you to say goodbye. Is there anything else you wanna?
What generally? I'm never
There's a
going to have
man
this
outside your window.
Yeah, he's the one. He puts me to bed. No, it's been it's been lovely having you, and I hope you have a good time when I'm gone.
Oh, that's really sad. Thank you, Armando.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, let's carry on. Your character, Himesh, Daniel, is a real-life Don Quixote in a way, because he can take anything that you... And he doesn't lose hope. He's a very romantic man. It's a very romantic conception of his profession, would you say?
I agree. That's a really nice way of putting it, actually. Yeah, he does. He has a romance for it. He does have a real love for these movies and this franchise. You know, you get it in the first scene, like that first one shot. He says, you know, it's the last thing my dad read to me, and he's maybe making it up, but it genuinely does mean something to him, these movies. So, he wears his sort of vest from his previous movie, and he wears this stuff with pride. So he wants this one to be good. Maybe for himself, because he, as the series goes on, you do sort of realize he has his own ambitions, and he sort of brings those to the fore. But it's all in service of his love for this franchise. He actually wants this movie to be good, and he believes in this genre of filmmaking, and that it can be good when you make it a great movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, the interesting part about that is that these movies are very hard to make and can be very chaotic, but they mean something very profound to a lot of people, and this show honors that in a way.
Yeah, I mean, later this week we're going to New York Comic Con, and that's going to be I've never done a Comic Con before, but like that's sort of the church of that sort of thing, right? They really adore various franchises and really take it to their heart. So yeah, it means.
I mean, they might kill us, right? It's not impossible. This could be the
been
last
really
panel.
Great.
Yeah.
Armando's dead, and now we're going to be dead.
One by one. Yeah, and Lolly, your character is the eyes of the audience. We tend to identify with her because her, like she like us, is thrown in the middle of a very, very chaotic environment of a tsunami, almost. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think she says what a lot of people are thinking, but would never say. Sometimes unhelpfully. But yeah, I think we've all had those moments where we're kind of like, why does this work the way it works? Surely we could change it and things would be better and everyone would have a better time. But the hierarchy is so entrenched, and like these machines are always going to exist probably the way that they do. So it's quite fun to like inhabit a role who's just like pointing out problems and not really helping them out at all, but just observing from a distance.
Yeah. And John, what did each one of them bring to their character, bring to the table that wasn't on the script, that wasn't on the page?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I think for Lolly, we had an idea. I would say, honestly, she brought so much, and from the pilot to the second episode, and then on from that, it was really like a real, genuine collaboration. Like we had some thoughts of Dag, and then it was really without like sitting down and talking about it, but like Lolly, I think, is amazing. I've long admired her and her work, and her, she's, I think, brilliant in the show. And so
it's
we
mutual.
really, So we really did that character, honestly, was very thin, and then it became, I think, very like pivotal, and she's gives it, and I kind of gives the show an aliveness and a point of view that is really important, right? As she says, unhelpfully being like that thing of like, if they're doing something wrong, surely we need to tell them, having that kind of edge, and also the sort of the younger angle of someone arriving at a world, arriving at this kind of these movies slightly too late. I think that's probably a experience that people will be able to relate to, of like coming to an industry just as you feel it's maybe the glory days are gone, and like what have we got left. And I think that point of view I was really interested in, and I think is important to the show. So honestly, I think that character out of everyone, out of all of them, grew the most from pilot to season and moving on. I think you see it becomes increasingly important in the show, because the show it's a big ensemble, and we were finding it as we were going, and that character, I think, goes from something relatively small to becoming more and more central. Yeah, and for Himesh, it was, what's really important was when we had the point of view of, as you say, a romantic, he just has such first of all, he just has an incredible face, right? And this sounds so basic for an actor, but it's just amazing, and you can just his eyes are so soulful. I'm sorry, I know it sounds like I'm in love with him, and my wife is here somewhere, so apologies, but
carry on.
yeah. But you can just project so much, right? And his face can be both very hopeful, but also it can turn very sad very quickly. And I think for the show to have soul in it, and for it to feel like it's about this guy who is trying to make something that he really loves, but for him, possibly he's constructing something that is going to bring about the destruction of the thing that he loves the most, which is cinema, right? He's making a movie, he's making something, and then if he steps back, he might have accidentally built the Death Star, and it's going to blow up all the multiplexes, and cinema won't be around. And he's in this very weird position. And so to portray all of that, to be both very funny, but also, soulful, and a delicate enough actor that he could do all of that, was very difficult to find. So that was important. And I've got nothing to say about Daniel. But that part, I would say, that part in any other hands, it felt like my biggest fear for Eric is it could feel like COD, European director, right? Like this art house guy. And I think as again, I would say his arc across the season is the biggest out of anyone's, right? He goes from initially he's in control of this movie. He thinks he's making a subversive movie. We really see him get ground through the gears of this big machine. And, he goes to it really gets a lot for him, right? He gets sort of stress mad, and he's really losing control. He's sort of losing himself. And we push him pretty far, right? It goes to some quite comic places with how stress mad he is. There's an episode on location where he's got this like big floppy hat, and he's got the toggle stuck in his beard, and he can't get his hat off, and he started sleeping in his hat, and everyone's like, Eric's gone mad, we're losing faith in our director, we're losing him. And we would write, and he's got the hiccups because he's stressed, and so he's hiccuping in this weird camping hat. Everyone was like, Eric's lost it, he's gone mad. And we would write all this stuff for Daniel, and he would play it so straight and so for real that you just completely believe it. And so the arc that he goes on is, out of everyone in the show, is the biggest and the weirdest, but he does it in a way that is completely real. And that, I guess that's just, you work with really brilliant actors that are both comic but just subtle and brilliant, and you can push them quite far and they can sort of carry you along. So yeah, it's amazing, a genuine privilege to work with all of them. Yeah.
So, did you enjoy working with John?
Nah.
So much.
It's difficult if you don't have that much on the page. You have to make it yourself.
It was a lot of improvisation.
No, I always say, for me, as you know, I'm half from here, but I'm also half from Germany. And as you know, This is a comedy desert. So to be invited to a marriage between the funniest of the two worlds of England and America, and incredible people in front and behind the camera, coming from all these different places also, which is interesting. So it's not only the cultural clash between English sense of humor and American sense of humor, but it's also stand-up comedy, it's theater, it's film, it's television. So there was a wild, fantastic, exhilarating mix. And so I felt so happy as a German to be invited to such a fun wedding. And John, that's why John made it so easy for us to then play around with these jokes. And he's always playing with his curls, as you can see. So whenever he would show up and play with his curls, you knew that he was thinking of an even better joke, which to me, again, as a German, I thought was impossible because it was already so funny on the page. But then he would throw some alternative lines at you, and always kept on going, always with that focus to make the scene even funnier. And that was just a pure pleasure. So
some of them were like prepared, but then like sometimes he'd just come with like a scrap of paper he's found somewhere, and he's like written something. He's like, "Do you want to try this?" And it's like the funniest thing you've heard all day, and he's just come up with it.
Yeah, credit to my fellow writers. We had a brilliant writing team: Tony Roach, Marina Hyde, Dylan Mapletoft, Keith Akushi, Julie Weiner. Rachel Axler. It was a really good team, and that part is the most fun, really. Like, the constructing an episode is often quite painstaking and difficult, but pitching in lines like that on the day for this cast is just like pure ice cream. It's really fun.
Mm-hmm. These franchise movies are constructed in a very funny, a very curious way. Sometimes they begin shooting without a script, sometimes they begin shooting without an ending, but for a miracle, they pull it off in the end. Do you think it's almost like magic, like a miracle, that these monstrous, colossus things turn out to be good in some cases, but in others, there are many that are very, very good. When it works, it is sort of incredible, because they are really dysfunctional, and it is amazing that they can kind of turn it around so often. But honestly, I would say more recently, it's less likely that they're able to do it right. Like, I find it hard to in the last couple of years to find much sort of nourishment from the kind of the big franchise movies, that it's getting more and more difficult. So I guess when they work, it is kind of incredible. But I think there's maybe a kind of rethink or a repivot that needs to happen for them to stay ahead of the game if they can. Mm-hmm. Would you say this show is a love letter to the unsung heroes of this kind of productions? You know, the human factor. We tend to forget about it when we watch a blockbuster, but there are people working very hard, and they deserve more credit than they have.
Yeah, I think so. And as I said, I think that's what I'm so proud of with this show, that we're kind of highlighting that. And even with like the VFX, guy who I think you see in episode 2, and you'll see more of that madness as the show goes on. But it's kind of a wry look at that. We're kind of laughing at it, but it's also like it is a thing. Like, the VFX people in these kind of movies are deeply overworked, and that's and if one of these movies works, as you say, like sometimes against the odds, it's really down to the people who are below the line, as we say. Like, those are the people who are really sort of scrabbling every day to make it fit the schedule, make it fit the budget, make everything make sense. So.
Do you think Tecto's movies will do well at the box office if it were released today?
Yeah, probably.
I'm going to go watch
it. Yeah.
I would definitely watch Tecto.
Apparently there's a whole script, right? You wrote a whole
we wrote like a sort of 30-page treatment of the movie. Yeah. And that was really fun. That was a good day in the writer's room, sort of hitting all the beats of a franchise movie, like pretty mechanically. It was really fun. yeah, there's always a big fight over a power source, right? I've noticed this from franchise movies. There'll be some sort of we've got a power source in our movie. So what's the one in Avatar? It's unobtainium, right? They have an avatar.
Yeah.
And we've got resourcium, and there's a scene where it's like people fighting over resourcium. There's always something where there's like a golden orb that everyone wants, and then 3 people fight over it. I think I heard something about franchise movies, and this may not be true, but I heard that there was something that they wanted to make sure that if you could watch a franchise movie, I think this may have been Marvel, without any sound on and still basically understand what's happening. So if you watch it with the volume down, you're still sort of like, oh yeah, big guy wants glowy thing, bad guy wants glowy thing, third guy wants glowy thing, fourth guy gets glowy thing. Oh my god! But there is that. If you probably could get away with it, right? You could watch most of those films without dialogue and sort of understand. I mean, that's pretty sad, isn't it? That's now what we're getting, our national treasures that we wheel out and put them in a costume, and it's quite a sad state of affairs for all of us, I would say. Sorry, I've forgotten the question. I went on complete tangent. Apologies.
Well, the show focuses on the madness, but I want you to tell us the best memory from this set, the best memory that each one of you have from this set. It's not all madness. It's not all bad.
Well, look, it's been great to be here, guys. No, we shot a later episode on location in the show. It's Armenia, and I just had a great time. It was kind of fun. By that point, we were all really well bonded, and the show was sort of at a good sort of pace. We kind of knew kind of where.
Daniel wasn't there.
Yeah,
I wasn't there.
And the main thing is that Daniel Brühl wasn't there, and we had a really good time because of that. So
I think we were all delirious by that point as well, and kind of hysterical. And Aram, who plays a character in that episode, brought a speaker to our green room, which was outside, and it was like uncharacteristically beautiful weather in Scotland. And he just started playing like rave music, and we all just kind of lost our minds and started dancing, which wasn't actually part of the filming process, but it was very
They
enjoyable.
were asking where we were, right?
Yeah.
But we were dancing. And also then there's the episode before that, which is all a night shoot.
Yes, yeah.
And so we then shot, it was like 7 nights in a row, and that's why we were delirious by the time we got on location. But it was interesting what Armando was saying about how you don't really know what you're going to make until you see. You certainly don't on a night shoot, because by the end of the night, you're not there, basically. But I've seen like a bit of episode 6. I haven't actually seen it yet, but I was like, this is actually really good. There's a real
it's great
manic energy to it that I think is just there because we were all going wild
it's
at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's my favourite episode or shooting thing. Because we had this in episode 6 there. There's a night shoot, and they've got Eric's got this idea for this giant ball of like gas. It's sort of like a second sun thing. It's a giant like a gas ball, and they've built it practically, and it's suspended from a crane, and they're going to light it, and they're going to get one chance to do it. And we also had one chance to do it because of Leavesden. They had a curfew. The wind had to drop, so there would be a few nights in a row where we weren't allowed to do it, and then the 4th night we were allowed, and we'd got like 10 minutes to get it. And then we lit this gas ball up, and it was really cool. And it was like genuinely like a real adrenaline rush. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we were all like, fuck yeah, this is so cool. Oh my God, this is the best thing anyone's ever seen. Oh my God. And then I looked over, and there was just one of our security guards just stood there, and he was just like, oh my God, this is so boring. This is just like, look at, when do I get to go home? And then you just remember for like, oh yeah, for us, this is sort of everything. But for the guy over there, it's just like a job, and he just wants to go to bed. And you're like, that's a pretty humbling thing to remember. It's not everyone invested in the same way, but yeah, it looks really cool in the episode. I'm really pleased with it.
It also felt like the most sort of meta that it got, really, because they're waiting to fire the thing. The wind has to drop at the right time. Right. We spent 4 nights pushing it back because the wind wouldn't drop. You know, it was weird to get your head around.
So I think we have time for a few questions. If you have a question for them, shoot.
Thank you. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Where was we want to think where was the series filmed and how is that place? And this is a question for John Brown, but we also love to have a small story time related with the location from Daniel Brühl in Catalan, if it's possible.
Oh.
No me hagáis eso. No, book.
Yeah, we the show was filmed in Leavesden, which is just outside of the M25 in London, which is where obviously lots of this stuff is really is made. So it was, fortuitous for us UK writers to shoot it there. What was great was that on neighbouring stages, like big franchise movies were being made. So you would just see stuff like sometimes you just see a load of like men dressed as druids being sort of marched off to like the craft services, or like there'd be a load of nuns going somewhere, or it's a really weird place, but it was kind of the perfect place for us to shoot it, because it is basic, it's where it's at the minute of like 60% of these big movies are being made. So yeah, it's a pretty perfect location for us. Yeah, it's great.
Any other questions?
Thank you. See, the question is for Lolly. I mean, I didn't know you before this TV show. I found your character and your performance hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And I know Himesh's work, I know Daniel's work, and so I'm very happy that they're here. But if I continue watching the show, it's good. It will be because of your performance, which really took me by surprise.
That's so nice. Sorry.
Really, and I think it's worth saying. No, and I saw that you did a comedy TV show for 4 years, and Ghosts. No, yes. And I haven't seen it, but I think it was full on comedy, and it really shows your comedy acting chops in these 2 episodes. So what did you bring from that show to this show, and what do you think you had to relearn or to learn anew for this new shape of comedy that the franchise brings?
Thank you so much. I think, Ghosts was an ensemble as well. And it was a lot of people who started doing live comedy. And so I think we were all used to making each other laugh in the room and like keeping that like alive sense of comedy and keeping the ball in the air and improvising and bouncing off of each other's vibes, basically. And I think I tried to bring that to this. I think like it's hard to do that initially with a new ensemble with people you haven't worked with before. I'd worked with Himesh and Richard and Jess, but in a new group and with a new personality, sometimes it's not the easiest thing, but I think I tried to bring that just like joie de vivre. I think I'm more used to trying to get something done in one take and like get the funniest laugh the first time than doing something over and over again and kind of labouring the point. So I think just a live comedy background has like carried me through all the different parts that I've done.
Well,
that's not my life.
I think we got it. That's a wrap. Thank you so very much for being here. Muchas gracias. And
thank you.
Big round of applause for all of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.